Hey, Katrina, it looks like you're the only one here so far. I see Lynn coming in now, so we definitely have some time to wait. There's about 14 people registered for this session, so I definitely want to make sure that they get in here. I know there's some people coming from the previous session, but if you are here and waiting, what we can do is get you guys logged into the domain a little bit early while we wait for the remaining about 10 people. If you happen to be in the previous session, we already changed your password. So all this is the same. Just remember what you set your password to from the last session, and you can log yourself back in. If, though, this is the first time you're logging into the training domain, you will need to enter this temporary password. And then it will ask you to reset from there and change it to a password that you know. It's very, very important that we get the domain correct. MD for Maryland, VOA, CI, Volunteers of America, Chesapeake Incorporated, and TRN for training. So again, if you already changed your password from previous session, that's it. You should be good. But if you are just logging in for the first time to the training domain, you will need to use this temporary password. We're going to come back to this, but we are still waiting for about 7 more people or so. So you have a little bit of time to log yourself in. If you have any questions, there's a questions box, but I can also, I'm going to explain GoToWebinar more in depth in a minute here. So if you have issues, try to find that questions box. If not, we can kind of wait till I explain it a little more. Then don't worry, we'll get you logged in for sure. We are slowly creeping up to our anticipated number. So thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for being on time. Patrice, I just saw you hop in. I'm gonna make you an organizer. The only thing different, Patrice, that I will caution you about, that with great power comes great responsibility. If you happen to have to leave the webinar, excuse me, now that you're an organizer, you have the option to end it for all.
Oh, no.
Don't do that.
I'm not leaving. I'm here until 5:01.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I always like to point that out because it has happened, not to me, but it has happened. I've heard other trainers talk about it, and it's a whole mess trying to get everybody back in. So we always like to make sure you're aware of your power.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, 9, 10, we're at 10, so we're waiting for 4 more people. Guys, if you were in the previous session, I said this a couple times, but if you're just getting in, if you were in the previous session, you already changed your password. You should know what that is. If this is your first session today, you will need to follow these instructions that are on the screen. Use that temporary password, and that's what will log you in. We're at 104. I'm going to give it like 2 more minutes.
It's not on the screen yet. The instruction to log in. There we go.
There it is. Sorry. Thank you. I think I paused it before I actually changed it. So now it's there. We'll give this, like I said, about 2 or 3 minutes max before we get started to let anybody else come into the meeting. It looks like, I think we're about at the number that we're going to be at for now. If anybody sneaks in a little bit late, we'll make sure that they get caught up. But thank you again for being here and being on time, everyone. Some of you are carryovers from the previous session, but I do see some new names in here from the last session. Katrina, I think this is your first session, and Raquel, I think this is your first session. So I'll get introductions from you. Everybody else, welcome back. I'm going to point this out right away that there's going to be some overlap at the very beginning. We will get into more info that you didn't see in the previous session for sure, but just know so you're aware, so I'm saying it out loud. You have the right to zone out for a little bit if you need to, and I will call you kind of back when it's going to be new information. Or if you just want to see it all again and stay engaged, absolutely, I would prefer that. But I just want you to know up front that if you were in the last session, there is going to be a bit of overlap at the very beginning until we start branching off when we get to the client information again. So with that, guys, this is your end user training. I'm excited to be here. We had a great first session, and I'm excited to work with you guys as front desk, and I think a couple super users are in here. So for anybody that is new to GoToWebinar that didn't get to see this yet, we are using this platform. It's a little different than Teams or Zoom. You might need to click on the little flower icon on your taskbar that's at the bottom of the screen to pull up this control panel. The control panel is what allows you to mute yourself, raise your hand. When you click the little white arrow, it opens up audio information. Sometimes you might need to toggle between computer audio, phone call, or no audio. Sometimes you get GoToWebinar gets a little funky. You might have an audio issue. That will usually resolve that issue. Or if you have a separate mic or speakers, you have those drop downs to be able to select your different options. Let's go ahead real quick. I'm going to unmute everybody again on my end. I have the ability to do that. So if your mic turns green, go ahead and just make sure that you turn it red again. So you should see that right below your little arrow. So double check that for me. Perfect. You guys are a little bit smaller of a group, so we should be able to chat a little more. And then if you wouldn't mind, below your mute button is that raise your hand, especially for those of you that didn't get to experience this last session. Go ahead and put the raise your hand. If you see the little green arrow, that means it's available to go up. Once it goes up, it will turn into a red arrow, meaning that you can put it down. Perfect. I saw a bunch of you handle your hand raise. I'll use that every once in a while to check in with you, make sure you're good, make sure pacing is good, make sure you understand, maybe just check in on you after a break as well. So I do have the ability to put them down on my end as well. So just some quick notes about those two things, and then the other bit of info that's in the control panel is the questions box. So clicking that arrow one more time opens up, and you should see a little questions tab. And on that questions tab, or below that questions tab, you should see a box that says enter question for staff. Go ahead, especially if you didn't do this last session, put something in that questions box so that I know you know where that is. You could do that to ask a question. I might use that to check in on you. Perfect, Raquel, Charlotte, thank you. That's great. What's nice about this too is that we can log these questions, and if you, for any reason, would want them to be downloaded and sent out, I could do that. So if you want to use it for that reason, it's there for you as well. Most of you did this, but if you wanted to take another few seconds, again, it's in the control panel, click the white arrow, find the questions tab, and enter something there. We might need to chat with you as well. And if it's a chat, there's a difference between chat and questions. Chat is coming from us as the organizers. So Patrice or I might end up sending something through the chat. That'll show up as a little chat bubble with the ellipses on it. Just so you know the difference between the two. Perfect. Any questions about those two things? Or any of those GoToWebinar related things, any issues? Okay, great. Maybe. Thanks, Lynn. I saw your question come in. Well, statement in the questions box. To review here, we are going to take a minute, at least to introduce the new members to this session, or anybody that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves in the previous session. I'll introduce myself too, because I didn't do that yet. And we'll spend some time reviewing some core terms and concepts in the PowerPoint. And then we'll actually hop into the domain and start with those, or get into those last two bullet points on the screen. So we'll be able to manage our own record, our employee record. We'll be able to add a new client, manage client records, and then actually see what it looks like to schedule and complete some basic documentation within the system. So I'm going to turn my camera on again. Welcome back to those that I saw already. Welcome to those of you that are here for the first time. My name is Scott Shuttleworth. I'm a training specialist here at Qualifax. And this is today exactly my 1-year work anniversary at Qualifax. Yeah, we just rebranded too, so I might stumble on that name every once in a while. But I facilitate end user trainings like this, credible tours, webinars, and prior to my time here, I spent 8 years actually as an educator in the public school system. So both with high school students and started working and developing professional development, developing and presenting professional development sessions and writing curriculum for my adult colleagues. So that's kind of how I ended up here. It sparked a desire for change, and I found myself a new home here at Qualifax. So bringing that educational expertise to you to help you guys out and make sure that you are able to master this system so you can help and continue to serve, or even hopefully better serve the clients that you do wonderful things for day in and day out. So those of you that weren't here, so I'm going to pinpoint some people, and I know it's like being in school, you're probably nervous, but just so that I just like to know everybody. I like to understand where you're coming from, what your background is. It just makes it more personal too as we stare at our computer screens. But Katrina and Raquel, for sure, I'd love to hear from you. You could either unmute and talk out loud since it's just two of you, or you could put it in the questions box. But I saw Raquel's microphone actually. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, this is Raquel Fleming. I'm the office manager for the DC Hope Center.
Okay. Okay, and then anything fun and interesting, Raquel, that you wanted to share about yourself?
No.
Fair enough. Katrina, what about you?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katrina Crawford, and I am the front desk specialist here at the DC Hope Center.
Okay. Do you have a fun fact?
Everything's fun.
Everything's fun about. I love that. Everything is fun about. Awesome. Thank you, guys. I don't think I missed anybody. I think the rest of you are from the previous session, so I'm sure nobody's going to speak up if I did miss them. So thank you, you two, for introducing yourselves. Welcome back once again, and I'll stop saying that. But we should be good.
Hello. So you couldn't hear me at the last one, Scott. So I'm Valerie Roseberg. I'm the intake supervisor at Maryland. I can talk to you now.
All right, I'm here for it. It's so much. Actually, I enjoy when people can unmute because it gets a little lonely staring at my computer screen and only hearing myself talk. So thanks. Good to hear you. All right, guys. Thank you so much for that. we'll continue to chat a little bit more. I'm going to turn my camera off though, so you can stare at the screen, the important information and not my face. But what should you be expecting here out of the next few hours? You're going to see some live demonstration from me. I'll be in the system clicking around. I'll be sharing my screen like I am right now the entire time. You will also have the ability, once we log in, to have hands-on practice. So I'll ask you to click along with me. I might ask you, or I might pause for a little bit and ask you to click and get a little experience without me talking. But it's going to be a combination of those two things throughout the next couple hours. That might require you to toggle your screen, which means that at some point you might have to go to Chrome or whatever browser you're using, and then go back to the GoToWebinar icon to see what I'm sharing, and go back and forth and toggle those two screens. Whatever works for you. If you like to watch and take notes, if you want to click, if you want to just listen and click, whatever you need to do is entirely up to you. But just make sure that if you have questions, if you have comments, concerns, or need me to slow down or repeat, that you express that, because I'm always more than happy to do those things. Third thing you should know in terms of expectations is that we're basing this mostly on Credible's best practice workflows. I know a little bit in my conversations, or from my conversations with Patrice and Geneva, but most of this will be functions based. We'll learn where to click, where things live in the system, and then you'll still be receiving a little bit of internal training from your teams in terms of how, more of the how. Role specific, agency specific, even sometimes team and program specific, that will come from your internal team. But we are going to get a master of these functions here by the end of the day. This I'm gonna breeze over just a little bit this time, because I think we're in, at least from the first session, we all seem like we're in a good place for this. You all seem excited, and keeping that excitement, keeping that can-do attitude, keeping that concept of I'm gonna get this. Even if there's hurdles, even if there's hiccups, I'm going to ask my questions, I'm going to ask for help, or maybe I'm the person who is helping, and we're, as a team, going to feel like this woman right here at the top of the mountain, feeling successful, feeling like we have mastered this domain. With that said, you're still going to have questions. You're still going to have to go in and practice. It is a lot. So you might not be a full-out master, maybe not a black belt by the end of the session, but we will get you very, very comfortable with functions by the end of the session today. Okay. Here are some kind of, I like to say meat and potatoes. That's just a phrase that I like to use. I grew up hearing that and eating a lot of meat and potatoes, so it's always a phrase that's stuck in my head. But these are important concepts that we want to understand before we actually get into the system. Things that you'll need to lock away in order to actually understand the functions. And that first term is teams. Teams are what drive access to view client charts. And typically it's a shared team between the client and the employee that drives that access. There are some overrides to that. There are some profile codes that will allow you to view all clients. And if that's something that you would need and don't have, we can absolutely discuss that. But typically for most employees, it's that shared relationship of teams that allows access. So the example on the right-hand side, if I wanted to see or have access to a client on that outpatient mental health team, then I, as the employee, would also have to be on that team. All employees, all clients will be on at least one team, but all clients and all employees can be on multiple teams, up to every team in the system. Those teams are housed within the client and employee profile. We'll see a bigger picture of that, and we'll actually see it in the system in just a little bit. Second term is programs. Programs are what allow for the scheduling of and the completion of services for clients. And like teams, it's a shared program and it's a shared program that allows for the scheduling and completion of those services. So for example, if I want to schedule an individual therapy session, the individual therapy session is part of the outpatient mental health program, for example, on the left-hand side here. This is just not quite the same in your domain. Same concept, different programs. But if that individual therapy session is housed within the outpatient mental health program, then I have to be on that program, or the person I'm scheduling for, the employee I'm scheduling for has to be on that program, and the client also has to be on that program in order to schedule and then complete that service. Just like teams, those programs are housed in the client and employee profile. Just to drive this home, the key takeaways here are that teams drive access and security, and programs drive access to services. Typically, it's that shared team and shared program that really drives that home. You can see in those screenshots on the left-hand side, just a bigger picture of what a client record looks like and where those assignments are housed. And on the right-hand side, especially for those of you that are scheduling for others, this service drop-down is really going to be important for you. And we'll get plenty more experience with this when we get in the software. But note right now that there is a program abbreviation on the left-hand side of all of these services. So for employees who are on multiple programs, you'll just really want to be careful that you're looking at that program abbreviation first. Because some of those services might cross multiple programs. So we'll just want to make sure that we check that abbreviation first before we actually schedule. Any questions about those two terms so far? Feel free to raise your hand, unmute, put it in a questions box, whatever works best for you. Okay. Moving on to services then. It's a fairly common term, but we want to think about this in the concept of Credible. Services are what create access to documentation or to forms. So when I schedule that individual therapy session, it's actually creating access to the progress note that the clinician is then going to fill out and document. The example on the screen is a group therapy service, which provides access to the group progress note. The other thing to think about with services within Credible is that we consider in Credible all client-facing and all client-related documentation, both billable and non-billable, as services. So all these assessments, all these progress notes, all of these injections, all of those kind of primary care services, all billable, all services. But all of the things that we might do on our end as maybe front desk, like releases of information, consents to treats, financial responsibilities, no-show notes, all of those non-billables, we still label them in Credible as a service. It's all encompassing. Last real key term here are episodes. An episode is another key term, but within Credible, we're thinking it's a measure of time, period of care, or a measurement of a period of care within a particular program. So when a program gets assigned to a client, an episode automatically opens for them, and then that episode is going to be open and capturing all information from admission to discharge until we actually go through and discharge them, unassign them from the program, and that will close out their episode. For every program that a client is in, they'll have a corresponding episode. Active if they're still in the program, closed if they've been discharged or removed from the program. We do have some resources. So 2 terms to think about, concepts to think about are the knowledge base, Credible's knowledge base, and Credible's learning management system, or the LMS. So those are 2 resources that we have that are kind of key terms. But the other thing to note here is that you have other resources around you. You have great colleagues. You're going to have super users, you have supervisors, you'll eventually have an EHR or 2 EHR administrators. Everybody around you is here to help you. So absolutely use them, and tying it back to that success slide, that's what's going to help you be successful. We're here, I'm here to train you, I'm here to get you to where you need, but once I step back, we want to make sure that you have not only our resources, but feel comfortable asking your colleagues and know that you can and should, so that you can continue to be successful. Before we start logging in, does anybody have any questions? I always like to say questions, comments, concerns, anything of that nature. All right, guys, don't be afraid if you do, but we'll keep chugging along then. If you haven't figured it out, we like to use pictures here as analogies. And this picture is representing your training domain. So you have a production domain, which is MD VOACI, and you have a training domain, MD VOACI TRN. Those 2 are separate domains. The training domain is an exact copy over of your production domain. It got copied over like late last week. So you're going to see live data. You're going to see information. You're going to see relevant clients. They might have a diagnosis entered. They might have allergies, all of these different things already entered. What's nice though, and why we call it a sandbox, is that the training domain does not communicate with your production domain. So you can get into your training domain and you can build it up, you can tear it down, you could kick it around if you want, if you're that mean kid who kicked people's sandcastles down, boo to you. But if you want to do that in this system, you can, and it's not going to cause any problems. And we encourage you to dig as deep as you want, so that you feel comfortable with all aspects of this software, because it does not communicate with your production domain. You're not going to mess anything up. You could change a client's address, you could change a client's name in the training domain, and it's going to have 0 effect on your production domain. So do that, experiment with it, come back to it frequently, and play around with it. With all that said, there might be a handful of things that are not quite finished because you guys aren't quite to go live yet. So there's still some stuff under construction. And if we find maybe a form or a piece of functionality that's not quite configured in the way we wanted it yet, call that out, let us know. We'll make note of it and make sure that it is being handled in the way that it should be handled. With that, takes us to our login screen. This is unnecessary. If you haven't yet, make sure you go to crediblebh.com, preferably in Chrome, Google Chrome if you can. First initial, last name, if this is your first time, Cred 2022. And that TRN domain is so important. So MD VOACI TRN. go ahead and let me know if you, I would prefer it to be in the questions box if you could. Put something in the questions box to let me know that you're logged in and ready to go. I'm good, excited. I'm tired but ready. Let me know in the questions box when you're ready and logged into the training domain. Michelle Booker, thank you. Charlotte, I see you, thank you. Lynn, thank you. Valerie, thank you. Okay, there's 12 of us because Patrice and I are in that count. So looking for 12 hands. This is the one time where I will kind of wait for everybody to give me some acknowledgement because we definitely want you to be in there. Hannah, I see yours. Thank you. This is it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 12. Logged in and ready. Remember, if you were in the previous training, you already reset your password. Duong, I see your hand. Is that letting me know that you're good? If you are, just pop that in the questions box. Okay, great. Raquel, we had a couple issues in our last training, so let me check with. That's why. Hey, Patrice. Did Raquel get added?
Yes, sir.
Did Raquel get added maybe after the copy over?
She should be there. No, she was on the list for a long time. Click on the F. Maybe somebody spelled her name wrong. That's so weird. Okay, let me check.
Okay, I'm gonna add her in the TRN real quick, but if you want
Okay.
to check in the prod domain, see if
Yes,
she's there.
will do.
She did say that you don't love her, so you might have to make up to her.
What do you mean? She's my favorite.
Raquel, is that enough? A free dinner or something, maybe?
Wow, are you on Raquel's side, Scott? How much is she paying you?
I can't disclose that information. What team should she be on? Initially, at least.
Sorry, I was on mute. You can put her on DC MHRS.
Okay. And that's good for now. Raquel, it's still going to be what was on the screen, the Cred 2022 profile code. Should be, is she front desk? Patrice, I lost you there.
Oh, wait, sorry.
That's okay.
I thought you were talking to Raquel.
Was it, yeah,
Sorry. She is front desk, yes.
front desk, okay. Got it. Okay, Raquel, you should be good now to log in with, yes, with everything that's on the screen. Any other issues? Okay, I'm not getting. I'm not seeing 12 responses here yet. I know I did say that I was going to wait, but actually we don't have time to wait. So if you do have issues, speak now or forever hold your peace. I will, though, Raquel, just let me know that that worked. Perfect. Okay. Well, guys, I think then we should be good. hop in. Remember, there's going to be a little overlap here with some of this overview information really until we start getting into the client portion of this. Oh, Katrina, okay. Thank you for catching me with that. Crawford. Katrina. Katrina, did you log in with K Crawford?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to update your password and I'm going to send it to you in that questions box. I'll type it so that way you can just copy and paste everything real quick. Okay, so Katrina, you should have gotten that message back in the questions box.
Yes, I received it.
Perfect. So just let me know. I'm going to do a little bit of an overview as you log in, so you won't be missing too much. But I do want to just overview the home tab for us real quick. And then if you still have issues, Katrina, I'll check back in with you. So anytime that you log in, you'll be directed to the home tab. This is where you could see some basic overview information about what's going on in the system for that day or maybe even multiple days. I also want to point out that I said home tab because these little things across the top are what we call tabs. So you have the home tab, client, employee, schedule. Based on your profile code, you might see different things, or you might not see some of the tabs that I have. And that's okay, because that means that you just don't need access to that part of the system for your role. On the left-hand side, we have a bunch of widgets. Those light blue outlines we call widgets. You have a quick search widget, which is just last name or ID, but you have more powerful search functionality in your client and employee tab. We have employee messaging that we're going to turn on here. You can open that up. You won't see your name yet, and that's again because we have to turn it on. So good note for you and for everybody is if you want to send an employee message and you don't see yourself or don't see the employee you're looking for, that means they didn't turn it on, and we'll see how to do that in just a second. We're going to add a to-do list item in just a little bit. That's where you can do this from the home tab. Incomplete services, you might not have as many of in front desk, but in case you did start a service and didn't sign and submit it, that means it's not fully completed. You will see a list of those in this widget here. You have a few links that were configured for you. They're all external links. Below that, you have authorization related information. So critical auths, meaning that they're either above or below anticipated pace. So you could view that to get more information, but in some way they are critical. And then there's also a separate one for expiring authorizations. Then on that right-hand side, you'll see some more overview information. As you add to your to-do list, you'll see that as an overview over here. Think too about your to-do list items as like little virtual sticky notes. Most of us probably won't see prescription or pending orders, but if you happen to be one of those people, you'll see that overview there. And then the notification events and scheduled items. The notification events are for what are called notification triggers. So if there's something that happens in the system that has a trigger configured with it, and you are configured to be a part of that notification, you'll receive that and see it here. And then the scheduled items relate to the actual schedule tab, and that's for the person that is logged in. So we'll talk more about our scheduling and how we schedule for others in just a little bit. Any questions though about our overview here? Okay, quick test to those of you that were here in the previous session, or to anybody that is new and might have figured it out, but how do we get to our client record in one easy click? What do we click on? Where is it? You didn't think there was going to be a test.
Client tab at the top.
So the client tab would be good if we were looking for other clients or for clients. If I want to get to my record though, I'm going to click on something else. Anybody remember from the last session where I clicked to get to my employee record?
On your name?
Perfect. Yep, on your name. And Raquel, since you unmuted, I saw your other question. Yeah, if you don't see these other tabs like admin, billing, that just means you don't need access to that for your role, and that's okay. But 1,000 points to you, Raquel. Thank you. 1,000 points to anybody else that knew that answer, and well, I'll say 500 to those of you that knew the answer but didn't call it out. Yeah, to get to your record is the quickest way is to click on your name, your username in the upper right-hand corner. That takes you to your record. Quick overview of your employee record. On the left-hand side is the nav bar, navigation bar. We call it the nav bar for short. This provides you different access to different parts of your employee record. In the middle are some widgets. You can add an employee picture if you'd like. You can add a to-do list item from your record. When you do that from an employee record or from a client record, it will hyperlink that name. Your assignments are listed here, so take a look at your assignments. Just make sure you have some. If you have completed any services, you'll see them down here. And then on that right-hand side, you have some more overview information regarding your employee record. What we're going to do though is find our way back over to the nav bar. And we're going to click this config link. Those of you that did this already, you could just take this chance and opportunity to explore this config a little more. But if you have not yet, very important step, the 5th checkbox down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is what activates the employee messaging from the home tab. So I want to make sure that I check this box. I'll give you a few seconds to find that.
Wait, go back because I don't see how you got there.
Sure. You're in your record though?
So I'm in my profile.
Yep. So you clicked on your name, right?
Uh-huh.
You see, okay, good. And then it's this over here on the nav bar, it says config. Has like 2 little check marks as an icon.
You know.
Actually,
I got it.
That's Raquel, okay.
Got
You
it.
found it?
Yeah.
Perfect, and then you should see this. And that's where you have the ability to check. So once you have that box checked, if you wanted to, if you're viewing anything else, remember you always need to find a save button, and there's different ways it's labeled: update, save, complete, or add. In this case, it's an update button, so we'll click update employee config, and that's what's going to save your configurations here. Go ahead and find your way back to your profile. You could do that by clicking your hyperlinked name next to employee config. You could do that by clicking your logged in as name again, whichever one works best for you. Anytime, basically anytime you see your hyperlinked name in the system or a client's hyperlinked name, it will take you to their overview page. And once you find yourself back at your overview, go ahead and find the signature link on the nav bar, which is right below the config link. Go ahead and click that. I have, it's weird. Is anybody else's nav bar gone when they click into this in their training domain?
No.
No, you still see your nav bar over here, even after you clicked signature?
Yeah. You're talking about the little things on the side, the little boxes on the side.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's weird. I might just need to log out real quick and log back in. What I'm going to have you do though is add your signature. So if you haven't already added one, you'll see a green box that says add signature. It'll pull up a secondary window where you could use your mouse to sign. Might not be the most beautiful thing in the world, but go ahead and do that and click accept without preview, or preview and then accept, whichever one you prefer. I don't know if anybody's in this session or the person that asked this question. I remember seeing it and forgetting to answer it from the previous session. Somebody asked if you could upload a signature, but you can't. So once you're gonna have to manually sign it in here, unfortunately, and then it will pull in to your documentation later. Let me log out real quick. I don't know why that was happening to me. There we go. Okay, back in business. If you are a supervisor, remember you should see a secondary supervisor box for your signature. And if at any point you did want to edit that signature, either you had a name change or you just thought it was ugly and wanted to try again, you could always edit your signature. Valerie just asked a great question, which is, can you use a signature pad with employees or clients? If you do, yeah, if you have like a Topaz pad can set up at your workstation or wherever that is, yes. However, key point here is that in that config link, you will need to make sure that you check that signature pad checkbox so that Credible knows to interface with it. If you hover over that, it'll remind you. Perfect, Valerie. Good. Good answer or good question. Just as always, make sure you click update. Okay. The other thing, excuse me, the other thing or last thing to point out in your record here is or are work hours. So that's back over on your nav bar again. You're going to click, it has a little clock icon next to it. You can click work hours. And I already have some set up in here. This might not be as important for those of you working front desk because you're typically scheduling for others, but it is good to know and to talk about so that you understand why work hours are important for employees. When I enter work hours here, I have 2 start and end times. I can just do one big block of time from 9 to 5, or I could do maybe 9 to noon because I have a lunch break maybe from noon to 1, and then my second start time is 1 to 5:30. Go ahead and enter them just so you have them. You do have to do a little bit of scrolling. It's in 15-minute intervals. Once you enter a couple, you don't have to do all the days right now. You can maybe just do Monday and Tuesday, or just Tuesday since today is Tuesday, whatever you want to do for now. But as always, you'll click save. And now what that does, if you want to just look at my shared screen for a second, what that does is adds this little gray bar next to the schedule, or next on the schedule next to the day, to the left of the day that you enter that hour for. So what you want to know is, as somebody who's scheduling for others, that you can still schedule outside of those gray bar times, but that's just an indicator from the employee saying, hey, my typical work hours are 9 to 5. Please schedule me within that window. Or, hey, I'm working from 9 to noon. I have a lunch break from 12 to 1. I could feasibly take an appointment. You could schedule something there, but just ask first, because I typically take that lunch break. So when you see dark gray, that's good solid work hour. When you see that break without the dark gray, that's kind of outside of their typical work hours. Important to know just for that scheduling purpose itself, but there's also a function that we're going to see in a little bit called first available. And first available only functions, only has data to pull from if other employees, or if employees have work hours actually listed on their schedule. Any questions about any of those things? About your config link, your signature, or work hours? Okay. Find yourself back to the Home tab then. So up at the top, click on the Home tab. We're going to do two things from here. We're going to open up that employee messaging dropdown. And you should now see your name in this dropdown. As long as you went through that process with me, through your employee profile, config, click that checkbox, you should see your name here. So if you haven't yet, or just want to try again, when you're sending a message, you could select from this dropdown either a full team or an individual, and you'll only see employees here who have checked that checkbox in their employee config. So if you want to send a message to me, go ahead, click me. If you want to send it to yourself, that's fine. But click a person and then click the send button. And what that does is pulls up an extra browser window where you have the ability to enter a message. So you might type something in here like your 10:30 appointment is ready for you. However you guys decide to use this messaging or best utilize the messaging is up to you guys as an agency. Just know that it is there for you, that you want to be careful with information that you enter in here. Just be careful with PHI. We only say that because you don't necessarily know who's looking over the employee's shoulder at that time when the message pops up. And you definitely want to just make sure that you're professional with these, because any supervisor or any administrator will have the ability to view your message log. So they stay in your message log for 90 days, and then after those 90 days, they fall off into the HIPAA, the global HIPAA log forever. So definitely just be careful with what you enter here. When you're ready, just click the send button. And it might take anywhere from 10 seconds to maybe 45 seconds or so to make its way through the system and pop up onto your screen. The question came up in the last session. Oh, there it is. So now you can see what that message looks like if you're looking at my screen. You will have to click OK to dismiss that message. And like I said, the question in the last session came up, where do those live? How do I view them? Anybody remember? Anybody want to chime in? I'm going to test your knowledge again for those of you that were in the last session. Where do the messages that you send and receive live in the system?
In the message
The
log?
message log.
Yes, in the message log, which is in your employee profile, right? Thank you guys so much. I think it was Michelle, maybe? Michelle and Lynn?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys.
Yes.
Thank you. In the profile, I think I gave 1,000 points out the last time, so 1,000 to you guys too. In your employee profile, down here where it says message log, this is where you can find all of the messages that you have sent or received. They stay here for 90 days and then fall off into the HIPAA log. Any questions about messaging? Great. Let's do one last thing then before we start diving into client info. Back on that home tab, there's this add to do item that I said that we were coming back to. If I wanted to type something quick and just add it very quickly, I could type in whatever my to do item is in this text box and then click add. I'm going to show you how to add more detail to that though. You can click the detailed to-do list add button. And that will bring you into this to-do list add screen. You can add to-do list items to other employees by clicking the ellipses. Your name will always auto-populate since you're the person who's logged in. But if I needed to send something to Patrice, I could click the 3 dots. I could search for that person, could search for Patrice. And then I could click that ID link, and that's going to pull that employee in, and I could send that to-do list item to that person. Supervisors might do that, but you as front desk might need to do that. You might need to, let a clinician or remind clinician of something about a client. You could do that and pull them in. The begin date always populates as today, but I can target date if I'd like. So whatever I'm following up with, I will target date, let's say is tomorrow. So whatever needs to be done, we want that to be done by tomorrow. And then the summary is really what the to-do list item is. So on here, let's say, check on med history for client X. Something, I just put something right. You could put whatever might be applicable to you. That's your actual to-do item. And then all of these options below are entirely up to you. They're not required, but they can help. The priority can be set to low, normal, or high. Percentage complete can be used. Maybe it's something more long-term that you're completing over a period of time, and you can let people know where you're at in that process. There's different statuses, again, for letting people know, again, if it's a more long-term project. And then there are category colors that you guys can discuss as an agency if you want to make them mean different things, like green's billing, blue's related to patients, purple's related to supervisor, employee interactions. However you might want to do that, you have the ability to do so, or even just as individuals, maybe you like to color code things. However you decide to do that, there are options for you. I'm going to do purple this time just for fun. There is an is private checkbox, and it will, when you check this, other employees won't be able to see this, but those with higher level security rights, like master rights or admin rights, might still have the ability to see those things. So just keep that in mind. And of course, it is an EHR, so obviously we don't want to put anything too private in there. And the descriptive box is just there for you if you needed to expand on what your to-do item was. Once you're good, once you have all that information entered, you can click the add to-do item, and that's going to redirect you to your actual to-do list. And when you get there, you'll notice a few things. Across the top, you have different filtering options, priority, the different categories. The category is important because if I future dated anything, if I put this to-do list item out for next week or next month, it's not going to show up right away. So I will have to filter for those future items. They'll only show up once that date actually hits, unless I filter for future items. But I can also filter for completed items. Once I click this complete button, excuse me, it will disappear from your list and will fall off into that completed filter. You might not see delete. A lot of profile codes in the system won't have a delete button in a lot of different places, and that's okay. That is really mostly reserved for, again, upper level security rights, because we don't want to accidentally delete too many things, or really anything from our EHR. Finding our way back to the left-hand side of the screen, sometimes I kind of bop around. It's how my brain works. But back over on the left-hand side of the screen is the select button that will allow you to go back in and edit. And these arrows, if I hover to discover here, it tells me, but those are our priority levels. Up for high, right for normal, and if it was pointing down, it would be a low priority. The last thing that I will point out about to-do list items is that if I entered one from a client's record, so I navigated to a client, navigated to their record, or to an employee and their employee record, if I added the to-do list from their actual record or profile, it will hyperlink their name. So that way, if it related to, like this relates to Michelle, then I could go directly to Michelle's profile. So what questions do you have about employee-related functionality? Okay. Awesome. Well, definitely, I'm going to continue to say this, definitely don't be afraid. If you have questions, please ask. Now is the time, but if you guys are good, I'm good, and we'll keep rolling. That's going to actually take us to our client portion of the training. So we're going to create a new client. we're going to add a lot of information to the client's record. And yeah, that's where we're headed right now. So for those of you that didn't see this, where am I going to go? Easy question, but I like to prove a point when I ask this question. Where am I going to go? What am I going to click on to add a client into the system?
Client.
Right, and you said that like, Scott, come on, why would you even ask that? That easy of a question. I always like to ask that question because we like to iterate and reiterate that Credible is a user-friendly platform. And so when you're looking for client information, you could click client. When you're looking for employee-related information, other employees, you go to employee. So yeah, I like to ask that even though it's an easy question. And then from here, even more straightforward, just as user-friendly, there is an add client button here at the very top of the screen. Before we do that, for anybody who hasn't seen this screen yet, just a quick overview. The alphabet across the top allows you to filter for last name, so clients by last name there that are in an active status. Below that little alphabet, you'll see more search functionality compared to what we had on the home tab. Now here we could search by first name, by date of birth, by that last name or ID field. We could search for different statuses. We can search by the program or team. Now I will point out as a kind of a workflow related bit of information that before I add a client, even though we have a check for duplicate function that I'll show you, it is always good to search for this client first by selecting the all. So if you wanted to take, if you're with me on the screen, great, but if you wanted to take a chance to look at my shared screen, this all status here is really helpful as a first round of checking before I add a new client into the system. So I might search for Smith in that all status because they could feasibly have been seen by our agency before and we just forgot. They might be in an inactive or a discharge status. So instead of adding them new, we'd actually go in and reactivate them. But I always like to point that out as kind of a first step in the check for duplicate before you add a new client. Duong, I have not seen any agencies with the ability to configure a search by phone number, at least not here. Let me play around, or Duong, since you were in the previous session, if you want to, I'm just gonna throw this at you. If you want to go into the advanced search, we don't typically dig too far into that in our regular sessions, but you might be able to find a phone number field in the advanced search. So Duong, because you did this already, you already added a client, so if you want to feel free to do that, go ahead. But those of you that haven't added a client yet, we're gonna do that next. Just the last little bit of overview here. When you get to a client, when you see this list here, their name is hyperlinked, and there's this view button, both of which will take you into their profile. What you're seeing here, you might not see a list yet, but what you're seeing when you first click on the client tab is a list of recently interacted with clients. So as you interact with more, the list will get longer with the most recent client at the top. You can always access their schedule by clicking the schedule button directly instead of having to go into their profile. And actually, there is one last thing that I think you guys as front desk might appreciate. There is this add columns to view. It looks like a little keyboard icon. And those of you that were in the previous session, I didn't go over this in the previous session. So you might just want to check it out. It looks like keyboard, ice cube tray, and egg carton, whatever you think it is. what it does is actually allows you to add more columns to view here. So what you're seeing now is what is configured domain-wide, last name through state. You can't change that as an individual. But you can click this little egg carton. And if you need to see information quickly when you're searching for a client, like their ID number, or when you're searching for them and you want to make sure their gender identity pops up so that we're addressing individuals appropriately. Whatever bit of information might be helpful for you in a search, you can add those columns that are here. Feel free to click any. I caution to not click every single one of them, or you're gonna have to scroll a whole lot. But when you do that, as always, click save. And now it's user specific. So I clicked client ID, gender, and gender identity. You might have clicked 3 or 4 or 5 other things that you're seeing. So it's user specific, and it's what's called sticky, which means that once I log out and log back in, it's going to be the same, or I'm going to have those settings there again. So they will stick even after logging out. Very helpful if when I'm searching for clients, that's really pertinent information for me. Okay. That's now going to take us to the add client. If you're already there, fantastic. If you weren't, find your way up to the upper right-hand corner where it says add client. That's going to take us to our screen here. What you'll notice across the top is that you have some action buttons. Okay. What you'll notice across the top are some action buttons, including that check for duplicate that I mentioned. You have a box to assign teams. And below that, you have a lot of demographic information that you have the ability to fill out. Same action buttons across the bottom. First things first, there is a team assignment here. From my understanding, some of the DC teams have a one-to-one relationship. So if you assign a DC team, it might automatically assign the program. But for some of our Maryland teams, there's not an automatic program assignment to go along with it. So we'll assign the team now, and then we'll talk about how you might assign a program if you need to after. Choose a program or two that you know that you're on, or that you might be scheduling somebody for in the future. And if you're scheduling, or if you're putting them on multiple teams, it's a multi-select field. I'm going to hold down the control button on my keyboard. And that allows me to then select multiple options here. So control click gives me that multi-select ability. I'm just putting her, I said her, probably gonna make this a guy this time, on multiple teams because I might use them in multiple demonstrations here. So select your team, and then you'll notice that you have a few fields that are in maroon with asterisks. Those are your required fields, so you will have to fill those out. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out my required fields. Feel free, I'm just going to kind of be quiet for a second. Feel free to add more to this as you go through. I'm going to set the status to active. Typically, Patrice, there's a pending status. Is there since we're talking about actually adding somebody into the system for the first time, I usually see pending, but are one of these four kind of that pending option?
No, I think the team had decided not to use the pending option. So we have either your active, deactivated, disenrolled, or enrolled. We can add them, but you could just make it active.
Okay, I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Make sure that was
We might have to revisit that.
okay. So we'll do active. I'll select gender. I'm going to come back in and add more to this later. So this is all I'm going to add, but if you added more, that's perfect. That's great. But finish up what you are looking at or what you're adding. I'll point out the check for duplicate button here. This is kind of our second layer. Right now, it's not seeing any duplicates in the system. Just know that that check for duplicate is pulling against name, date of birth, and social security. So those are some important fields to know if you need that check for duplicate to function. As front desk, you might be adding multiple clients at one time. So I could feasibly click the save client and add another. And what that will do is clear out my screen. It'll actually save the person I'm on, clear it out, and then I can add the next person because it'll take me directly back to this screen, but empty. But if I'm just doing one at a time, like we are right now, we can click save client and complete. And that's going to redirect you to your newly created client record. Can you guys give me a heads up, either by a hand raise or by something in the questions box to let me know that you are looking at a client record? Whether you just created a new one, or maybe you went to the client tab and searched for somebody. Please give me some indication by hand raise or by a question box, something, that you are staring at a client record.
Hi, Scott. It's Mary. I'm seeing a couple hand raises come in, and I'm also seeing a question, something come in the question that they're looking at a client. And those hand raisers are continuing to come in.
Thank you.
You're
Everybody,
welcome.
this is Mary Straw. Mary's my colleague in the training department. We typically try to have two people here as in our training. She's going to be in the background. So if you did have questions, the questions box is a great way to get a hold of her. And she'll be able to answer your question maybe a little bit quicker than asking out loud, or if you didn't want to unmute, she'll be there for you. So thank you, Mary, for being here.
Oh, no. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
So guys, I'm not seeing a lot of hands. I just really want to make sure that we're good. If you're not good, I hope that you're going to ask a question or you'll let me know. But we will keep moving along. On this client page now, we're going to get a quick overview, then we'll actually start digging in to the different aspects of the profile and adding to it. On the left-hand side, this should look familiar. This is our nav bar. We'll see that nav bar in the client record and in the employee record. It is, of course, just a little bit different, though, from the employee, because we have different links here for different parts of our client information that we'll need to collect. In the middle, we have some widgets. Those widgets allow you to add a client picture if you guys use those. We can add a to-do item from here. This is what I'm talking about. You saw that example from my to-do list. I added from Michelle's client record, and that's what hyperlinked her profile. Assignments are down here. So we can view these and we can actually add to them and edit them if we need to. We'll do that in just a second. And then on the right-hand side is more overview information. Client info, demographic information, billing info, any notification events that related to that, all here. What we're first going to do though is go into that demographic info on the right-hand side. And to do that, I'm going to click the edit button. And when I click edit, it brings me back to this screen that looks a whole lot like when we were adding the client. And this is where I can do exactly that. I can edit this client's demographic information. So I might add a date of birth here. Let's do November 1994. I'll add in, let's do an address here. I live in Arlington, so I'm going to put Arlington, Virginia, 209. And I might put in a home phone number. So feel free to add or update or edit any of those fields. And then find your way down to the bottom of the screen where it says update client. And that's going to save that information for us. Once you save that info, go ahead and find the full client info link. And what that does, what the full client info link does, is gives you kind of a read-only version of all of that client info. So the demographic information at the top, miscellaneous info, like insurance or billing info, assignment info. You have this client extended information that is also here. So there's some fields that are related to that client extended. There's also a link for the client extended info that you could explore and update and edit if needed on the nav bar. We initially just clicked edit, but if you happen to click into this read-only version, there is the update button from here as well to take me back into update demographic info, or the print view we could print from here. However, if your main objective is to print a face sheet, I'm going to find my way back to the overview by clicking overview or the client's name. And if my main objective is to print, this print button is the quickest way to do so. You'll see that this pulls up some options. I have the ability to pull in different parts of the client profile, whatever I'd like to have put onto this face sheet. Visit headers will just give you kind of a readout of the recent visits that happened with the service type, with the employee, those kinds of things, basic information. The other field I like to point out is the hide empty profile fields. It is nice because number one, it saves your eyes from having to look at a bunch of empty fields. It also will save some, say some trees, because it'll save and cut back on how much paper you have to print with all those empty fields. We don't have much in this profile yet, so when I click print view, not much is going to pull up, but this is what that would look like. It would of course be more extensive the more we add, and I could print from here. I'm just going to close out of that though. There is one more thing in this client kind of info portion of the record in the upper right hand corner. If I click back into that full client info link, go ahead and do so. Or if you're just following along, that's fine too, following along and taking notes. some of these profile fields are in blue hyperlinks. And these blue hyperlinks are actually tracking changes to that field. So I did not save my information, I guess. I thought I updated that info. Good example, guys, of not clicking update. I swear I entered that. That's really strange that that happened. That saved my date of birth, didn't it? Somebody validate me. I definitely entered all that information for him, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I saw it. I witnessed it.
Yeah, you got
That's-
witnesses.
I don't know what just happened. Did that
My
happen to anybody else?
Computer's tired.
Training
guess-
domain gremlins.
So little training domain things, yeah. And that, just so you know, training domains are, when we start copying info, stuff gets a little crazy, but your production domain won't have those weird little hiccups because it's a freshly created domain. Now though, if I click on that full client info, there we go, that information is there. All these blue hyperlink fields are tracking our changes. So I changed the address. Oh, that might be why. I think somebody's working with my same client. That's probably what's happening. There we go. This is a perfect example of how this could be helpful. It looks like I updated, right? And then Charlotte was in here as well. Charlotte updated. And then I came back in and updated. So I always like to point that out. If something in your profile changed and you're not sure why, and that profile field's tracking changes, you can follow up with that employee and say, hey, what happened? Why'd that change? So that is helpful. Or maybe I just needed to access an old phone number or old street address for any reason. Those blue hyperlinks will help you out there. Okay. We are going to take a quick break here. We've been at this for about an hour and a half, and it's a good pausing point. But before we do, are there, Mary, any questions that came in that we can answer out loud, or anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, and this one is more for Patrice, I think. It's just in regards to, can you confirm that those with the billing profile code do not have the ability to add a client? There was somebody that didn't have that add client button, and it looks like they have the billing profile, and that may be,
Yes, I can confirm that.
okay, perfect.
The billing team does not add clients, so they do not have that ability.
Okay,
If they
so
want extra responsibilities, they are more than welcome to them.
perfect. And then Scott, do you mind just clicking on the link to show that log details of who's edited some information?
Oh, absolutely. So when you're looking for that, let me just go back a step to make sure we know. When you're in a client's record, full client info is up here in the right-hand corner. And then once you're in that full client info, any of these fields that have the blue hyperlink next to them are the ones that are tracking changes. So my address 1 has changes in it, so you can see that. If you haven't really made any changes to any of these fields yet, you're going to get that notification. It says no details or no changes were made. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, is there a way to see, because in the training from this morning, I added a family member for my person. Where does the family member show up?
So the family is going to actually be in the family link over here on the nav bar. Which we're going to do just for everybody. We're going to add family and contacts. It's part of the process here after the break. Any other questions?
I am not seeing anything come in.
Okay. Well, guys, this is a perfect time for a break then. I have 2:30, 2:31-ish. If you're okay, kind of just keeping it at a rounded time and coming back at 2:45. Rounded, I mean by like quarter hour. I'd appreciate that just to kind of keep it on track. But otherwise, step away, get a little break, and I will see you back at 2:45, everyone. All right, everyone, I am back and ready to go. If you could just give me an indication of that yourself, please let me know. Hand raise or something in the questions box. Just let me know that you are ready. Okay, Mary, you should be good in there too.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, good. I'm seeing a lot of hands. And yeah, I think we're good. Perfect. So we left off in a client. I was working with Jeremy, just in case you happen to navigate away, you can always just click back onto the client tab, and you should now have clients populated in your list here, clients that you recently interacted with. So I'll go back into Jeremy. There we go, just took a second to load. And the last thing we were looking at was the client info, editing, printing, checking out the change history fields and the full client info link. What we're gonna do next, what we're gonna take a look at are these teams and programs. So right now, I don't have any programs for my client. And if you have a newly created client, you probably don't either, unless possibly you selected a DC team that has a direct relationship with a program. But it looks like at least all the ones that I assigned to my new client didn't have a direct relationship. So we will have to add a program. To do so, over on the nav bar is a program link. So go ahead and find that, click on that program, and add this client to either a program that you're on, or a couple programs that you're on, or a program or programs that you would typically schedule for. So if you schedule for an employee a lot in the DC MAT program, let's assign them to them. Or if you schedule a lot for an employee who's on the Maryland Primary Care Adult program, go ahead and do that. I'm going to assign to a bunch just because, again, I'm going to use this, we'll use this client throughout the next couple of days of training, or I will at least. And so I'm going to put him on a bunch of programs. And it's just a matter of clicking assign. And that will assign the program, both assign the program and automatically open the episode for that program. You have the ability to set primaries. And the first program or the first team that you assign to is automatically set as the primary. But if you needed to adjust that, if DC MAT is not actually the primary, that's the one I assigned first, I can just simply click no and turn it to a yes. So go ahead and experiment with setting a primary program as well. Just giving you a minute to do that. Dugan, I just saw, Duong, sorry, I just saw your message in there. Primary is their main, would be their main program, the program where they're receiving, I would assume they're the majority of their services. If you guys have a different definition of that, you might just chime in about that, but typically that's just where they're going to be receiving most of their services. It doesn't have a whole lot of functionality tied to it other than if I go back here and look at their program list and team list, it's going to highlight that or put it into a bold font. But it just lets you know, or it lets anybody else know who's looking at the profile, that this is their primary or their main team or program. I just want to point out here that now that I have teams, programs, employee, I can just click this edit button if at any point I need to edit these teams or programs for this client. So go ahead, let's experiment with some teams because we could set primary teams as well. And we'll play with that too. So go ahead and click edit next to teams back on your client's overview. And it's the same process, assign and unassign from here. Team primary, which one's their main team? You could select yes, or sorry, no, and turn it into a yes for that team. Excuse me. You can enter primary employees as well. So when you assign a team, all employees who are on that team automatically get assigned to that client. So they can then view that client. But if there are a specific few employees who are primaries for this client through that team, you could set them here. I'm going to show you a different way to do that though. So we can assign and unassign from here. I'm going to go back to the overview, and I'm actually going to go into and click edit next to the assigned employee. And what I could do is the same thing. I can assign and unassign individuals. So again, when you assign the team, that bulk or that bunch of employees who are on that team will automatically be assigned. But if I needed to take off or assign individuals on a case-by-case basis, I could here. I could set a case manager if that's something that you needed to use in the system. But the primary button, that's why I like to show it through here, because I think this is just a quicker, easier way to assign primaries. So I can change that from a no to a yes. So now Tanika is a primary, and I could set which program maybe she's a primary for. If you wanted to search for yourself and add this person as a primary to your caseload, you could do that. So there are different employee options for you to be able to set here. And then once you go back to their overview, what you'll notice is that all of those primary employees, those main employees, are listed in bold, just like our primary programs and primary teams. Any questions? Any questions about teams, programs, or primaries generally?
I am not seeing anything come in.
All right. Let's mention and view a little bit of this episode information too. Remember that for every program a client is in, they'll have a corresponding episode. And I can see those episodes here, or at least a general overview of those episodes. If I wanted to go directly into one of these episodes, I could click on the hyperlink If I wanted to see all of them, I could click all. There's also a navbar button for it. I'll click all, and it will take me to a list of all episodes for this client. You have filtering options, and if there's a long list of them, maybe there's some inactive or closed episodes in here as well. But I can view by clicking view or the hyperlink, just like with a client. If I wanted to update and go directly to that and edit it, I could click the update. If I wanted to view any services that are attached to this, so like a service list for that particular episode, whatever belongs to that program and episode, the services related will show up in the service link or the service button here. And this is what I mean back from that PowerPoint. All documentation, everything that happens in that episode from admission to discharge will be housed here. You might at some point, I'm just going to click view on my top episode here. You might at some point have to update this with maybe an admission date, like an actual admission date if it differs from your auto admission date. Same thing with discharges. You might at some point have to come in and update those, so you could do that. And I could put in the actual admission date. So they were activated in the system. The system tracks when you clicked save on their profile. This activated date comes from when you assigned that program. But if their actual admission date differs slightly, maybe you put them in the system a little earlier and their actual admission date wasn't until today at 3 o'clock. I could do that and adjust the actual time. Same thing with the discharge date. And you can see the other episodic information that is listed here. But with anything in the system, you'll always want to make sure that you click update to save that. And now that information has been saved. Does anybody have any questions about episodes?
I am not seeing anything come in. Not seeing any hand raises either.
All right, Mary, thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, back over on the nav bar then, what we're going to try to find, or what you're going to find, is the family link. So go ahead and click on that family link. And then in the upper right-hand corner is the Add Family Members button. On this screen is where we have the ability to actually enter information for the family member for your client. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of how that function works, but I'm going to explain more of the lower half here in just a minute. But go ahead and come up with a name for your person. I'm going to do this because I want to show you some functionality here. The name for my family member is Michelle. And let's say this is, I'm going to say Michelle is a cousin. So you have a relation dropdown so that you can note the relationship type to this family member. Oops. Then of course you could enter phone numbers, whatever pertinent information you need to capture for the family member, address, zip, all that. There is an ROI obtained checkbox. This ROI obtained checkbox is not the actual release of information. So that's not the actual documentation. what you'll need to do and what you'll need to know is that all of those releases of information will actually be listed in the service list on the nav bar for your client. So if I wanted to, I could right click on the service list link, open it in a new tab, and then all of the services would be listed here. But if I was looking for the release of information, and Teresa and I already chatted about this, it's not in this list right now, but we're going to make sure that that gets fixed. But you could look for your release of information in your list here, and then all of the ROIs on file for your client would populate, and you can check your ROI data and enter that data here. If you do choose this checkbox, you will need to put in your start and your end date. Okay, so based on what you found in the service tab, I'm going to just put in some arbitrary dates here. I'll go a year out. You have the ROI dimension up here as well. So if this is a primary care, if you need to relate this to a specific dimension of care, you could do that. And then at the bottom, there's a lot of other reporting tools for this family member. So are they a dependent? Do they live at home? Have their rights been terminated? All those, including guarantor. If this person's a guarantor, we'll want to check that and put the dates in there for it. I could put notes in here. So maybe Michelle, do not discuss med history with Michelle. Okay, so maybe there's something from the release of information that Michelle doesn't have access to, and maybe you want to put that as a note down here. Lots of ways you can use that. I just like to demo it for that reason. And then there's this add link to existing client. So feel free if you wanted to use Michelle for your person too, because she already exists in the system. Or if you didn't, just link her profile just for fun. But what this add link to existing client does is actually pulls in, if I click that button, it pulls in a search or pulls up a search. And if that person, if that family member is already a client in my system, I can link their profile here. So Michelle Morelli is already here. So I'm going to click her ID. And what's nice about that is not only does it add a hyperlink to her name once I save this, it actually pulls in her kind of demographic information, so I don't have to enter it again. Or I don't have to freehand it. So if you have a lot of family members and you're trying to kind of compile all those, this is a quick, easy way to have all those family members in your system and linked together. Once you have that the way that you need it, once you have all your information captured accurately, you could click the Add New Family Member button, and that will pull her into the overview list. I said her, but whoever your family member is, pull them in, and you can see kind of the overview information. The Select button will allow you to go back in and edit. Because I used that Add Link button, now Michelle is hyperlinked here. So I could click directly on her, but if I open her in a new tab just so that I don't stray from the screen, that takes me right to Michelle's profile. All that other information, including the note, if I hover to discover over the I, I'll get that note that I put into our document. Does anybody have any questions about family members?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box, and I am not
I
seeing
do
any
have a
hand
question.
raises. Okay.
Do we have the same head of household precedents that we have in our current HMIS, where after a certain age limit cannot be designated as a head of household?
Oh, I have not heard that before, that our system can do that.
Okay.
I don't think that it does. I don't think that there's a check on that. I don't know, Mary, if you have heard that or no.
No, I have not.
Patrice, I'll write
Okay,
it down
cool.
though. That's a good question that I guess neither of us have.
Because I know in our current system, after a certain age can't be head of household. So if the adult moves out, then we have to reconfigure the household, whether it's a traditional household or just, you know. But if it doesn't have that, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think it has hard stops like that. I mean, you might be able to put them in, but I don't think it's built to hard stop like that.
Okay.
But we can, yeah.
I'm making a note of it for sure, and I'll follow up with you, Patrice.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for your patience as I type that, guys. Okay, so if we're good then, the next thing we're going to take a look at are contacts. And contacts are very similar to family, and it's actually right above the family link. So you'll find a contacts link. Go ahead and click on that. Just like with family, we'll click add contact. And that will bring us to this page here. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that the bottom half of the screen does not have those kind of reporting options like family members did. Family is the only place where you can add somebody and report on those like dependents, removed from household, guarantor, all of that. And contacts cannot be linked like family members can. So these contact types might just be separate outside of family. And as an agency, I don't know if you've had that discussion yet, or if you're going to continue to have the discussion about what might go in contacts versus family, et cetera. But you'll notice you have different contact types here, like maybe an emergency or a clergy or parole probation might be somewhere, something in here. I just wanted to check that. Maybe this is their parole officer, Officer Smith. So you can fill this out. Again, pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward with this one. Enter your phone numbers. City ROI is the same idea. If there's an ROI on file, I'll check it. I'll double check it in the service list, put my start and end dates from there. The only thing I will say, just a good note about this field, is that the phone number, when I save this contact, this first phone field is what shows up in the overview. So it can be handy, even if it's a mobile phone maybe, or whatever you want as the primary phone. It's good to put that in this first field here, because now when I click save, which go ahead and feel free to do, when I click save, that's now the phone number that shows up. So it just saves me a click from having to go back in and search for the secondary or the mobile phone if that's actually the primary. Just put it in that first field and you'll be able to access it quicker. Quick and easy there. Any questions about that one?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box or not seeing any hand raises as well.
Thank you, Mary. All right, let's zip right along then, guys. Over on that nav bar, we're gonna spend a lot of time on the nav bar here, excuse me, for a few minutes. On the nav bar, kind of near the bottom, you'll see a little doctor icon. It says EXT provider. These are external providers. When I click on that, it looks like I have one configured here already, which is interesting. George is a primary doctor. The top half of this screen is what's really important for you. By top half, I mean above the OR. The top half is where I can actually select from my dropdowns the different provider types. So you have a long list of provider types in here. I'm not going to select one just yet, but if I open up that provider list, you'll see that there is a long list of providers that you could attach to this client's profile. Maybe it's an outside provider that you want record of. Maybe it's an outside provider that has previously prescribed a medication and that client is still on a med, and we want to attach that provider with that external med. Why am I making such a big deal about the top half? Because the bottom half is where you actually enter information, and we're going to steer clear of this. Typically, we only want administrators or supervisors or kind of those higher level security or higher level admin roles to enter this information, because once I add from here, if I actually type into this field, it's going to add it to this list, but it's going to add it globally. So if I somehow, I clicked on Crystal Thorpe accidentally, if I missed Crystal Thorpe in the provider dropdown and I added her as Crystal but accidentally spelled it with a K, and then Patrice came along and was trying to add Crystal, but she didn't see her, then she typed her in, but typed it with a, I don't know, a K and a C. I don't know but the point is that it can make a mess very easily if we all add from here. So Patrice, I don't know if you have a process in place if there's somebody not in the dropdown. I don't know if you thought about that and how you want them to communicate that or note that.
We haven't, but that's a good thing to think of.
Okay.
I will write that down.
Listen, that's usually when I ask that question at the very, very bottom of everybody's list. So I always like to ask because it's not a huge thing, but it does typically come up at some point. So it's just good to think about.
So that's the client provider dropdown. Got it.
Because you can adjust profile codes too to not see the bottom half. So only certain ones do, if that was something down the road you needed to do, or just at least have a process in place to check, whatever. You kind of sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole there. I didn't need to.
No, it's fine.
All right, guys. What's nice, the one thing that I did not mention is that if I select from the type at the top, it will narrow down. So if I'm looking for a primary doctor, that's going to narrow down my list at the bottom to anybody who's already been entered. If I'm looking for psychiatrists, right, that's going to narrow down my list of psychiatrists. So feel free to choose from your drop downs and just add anybody there. Once you choose from the drop down, click add from list, and that's going to add that external provider to your client's list. Okay. On that list, you have a detail button. The detail just pulls up like address info, email, whatever has been entered for that external care provider. I could also click the edit button. And I can enter start dates and term dates. So whenever our client has or started seeing this particular doctor, the ROI checkbox is here again, so I can note that. Is PCP is just a reporting, just one extra reporting field for the primary cares. And I could add notes here as well. Seen once a week, whatever you might need to use that for. If you update any of that, of course, click your update button and that information will pull. And just like in the other places in the software, if I hover to discover, I could see that note that I entered in here, which is nice. So not only, just so you have this information, not only does this just provide me with a list of external care providers, but again, if I need to document a med that a client is on, maybe my psychiatrist was Milena, maybe Milena prescribed an antidepressant to Jeremy previously before he got to our agency at VOA, and I just want to document that. Now that I added Milena as an external care provider, when I go to document that med, Milena will show up and I can tie her to that medication through that documentation. So that's just so you know what that functionality is and what it ties to. What questions do you have about external care providers or anything up to this point?
I'm not seeing anything come in the question box, and I don't see any hand raises.
All right, Mary, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Just checking my list here, guys, make sure I'm covering everything for you. We have 4 more bits of info here to cover on the client's nav bar. Starting with warnings. So on the nav bar over there on the left-hand side, you'll find that little exclamation point with the warnings. And when you click on that warnings, it's going to take you to the add client warning page here. Your start date will populate as today, and then the rest of this information we'll talk about here for just a second. But warnings are really anything that might be pertinent information for others to know before they interact with this client. So I've seen it used in so many different ways. I've seen it used as simply as maybe the client is on crutches and just needs a little assistance getting around the office. Maybe they're prone to outbursts, like violent outbursts maybe. It's possible you could use this to maybe note that this client should only be scheduled with male employees or female employees, or if you're out in the community a lot, you could put community information like I laughed at it at the time, but it could be a very serious situation. You know, watch out for grandma is what somebody said in a training one time. So things like that, gun in the home, vicious dog, in whatever you might need to know could be entered here. So I always like to take a second to ask, because I'm not a clinician, I'm not out in the field. What other warnings or is there anything else that you can think of or that you might put in here that you've seen as a warning? Feel free to enter that. Either unmute or if you wanted to put that in the questions box, just kind of opening it up to you guys real quick. Anything, maybe I gave you too many examples and now you can't think of anything else. Or you're getting to that point in the day, or you get to that point in the day where you're just,
One just came in from Patrice in the chat about topics not to discuss in front of partner.
oh, okay. So Patrice, you're talking like if you're doing a kind of couples counseling or something?
Yeah, so if you're doing a couples counseling or if you're doing, you know, a domestic violence victim and they bring their person with them, there's certain things that you just can't talk about in front of their significant other.
Got it.
Like don't discuss finances or
really
job.
basic. I was gonna say doing the dishes.
Yeah, finances or job searching.
Okay.
Job searching is a big
Job
one.
searching. There we go. Yeah. Etc. with partner. Thank you. Thanks for chiming in, Patrice. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That is actually one that I haven't heard yet in my training. So thank you.
I used to work at a domestic violence shelter. There's a lot of things that you cannot discuss.
Oh, I bet. I bet. And that actually, speaking of that, that actually leads me into this level as well. You know, depending on what you put in that warning could dictate the level of that warning. So, you know, if it's something that's not too triggering or too much of an issue, we could keep that as a low level warning, all the way up through urgent warnings. So low, medium, high, and urgent. We always suggest to be very particular, very picky about what you choose to set as an urgent warning. That's maybe a discussion that you'll continue to have internally that I would suggest to have internally, because we really want that urgent level to be saved for just the most urgent, like do not do anything else before you look at this warning because it's going to cause issues, major issues if we don't follow this. So just things to think about with those levels there. I'm just going to choose medium. And then working my way back here, the end date is suggested to leave open because we don't know when this warning is no longer going to be active or pertinent to this client. So if I end date it for a month, once that end date hits, it's no longer going to show up in the other parts of the system where we'll see it, which I'll show here in a minute. So of course, if you can discuss dishes and job searching and all that, and there's no longer a need for the warning, we'll come back. We could come back and end date it. But initially, leaving it open is the best practice, just so that it will show up in all those places that it should. So once you're ready, well, let me just say this before I do that. This has nothing, just so you're aware in case you're looking at it, this only has to do with the inpatient module. You guys don't have, I know you guys do some residential, but you don't have Credible's inpatient module. So that's what this checkbox relates to, just FYI. But when you're ready, go ahead and click the add warning button, and that's what's going to actually add your warning to this client's record. You can edit with the edit button. You may or may not have the delete button. And again, that's okay, just based on profile code. Best to not delete a lot of things in the system. If it does no longer become necessary, you could just come in and end date it. But let me show you where these exist. So if I go back to the client overview page, you'll see in the middle now we have a new widget called warnings. In the upper right-hand corner, this purple color is kind of hard to see in this background, in that blue background, but there is a new little icon there, and it's it's listed in the color of the highest level warning. So if there were an urgent warning on Jeremy's record, it would be in red. But we just have a medium. I could click on that, it'll show me all active warnings. But this is what I mean, like if you end dated and it becomes inactive, they won't show up here. You could search for it in the link, but once it becomes inactive, they no longer show here. The other place you'll see it is on the schedule here in just a little bit. When we go to schedule, we can also check and see warnings. what questions you have about warnings.
I am not seeing anything come in the question box. I don't see any hand raises as well.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mary. Just give me 1 second, just checking my notes, making sure I'm where I need to be. Okay. All right, guys. Last 3 things. And these were in no particular order, right? This is just functions based. So, as you think about workflows, you might think about how these get rearranged and how you'll actually work with them. And I'm only saying that because we're about to look at insurance next. And typically that would be, one of the first things that you would do, but depending on your workflows and how that fits in is really different for every agency. So at least in terms of functionality, let's take a look at that and click on the insurance link. And you shouldn't, unless you're working with a client that was in the system previously, but if you created a new client, you shouldn't see insurance here yet. So what we'll actually do is add one with the bottom half of the screen here. You have an order number, so you can go up to 9 insurances. I have yet to ever see all 9 of them be used. I would not take that as a challenge necessarily, but I just have not seen that many yet. But in that insurance drop down, this is where all of your payers are listed. So all the payers that you work with are uploaded into the system, into this drop down. So this is where you would choose I'm just going to choose Maryland Medicaid. I lived in Maryland for like 6 years. What I need to do next after I choose the payer is enter their insurance ID. It is a required field. And the other required field is the coverage start date. So I'll go ahead and use my calendar picker to choose that. Just for your knowledge, the rest of these fields are not required. I only need the order, payer, insurance ID, coverage start date. Obviously, agency workflows will dictate different things. Different payers will require different information, and you can see that information that you have the ability to enter here. Group name, group number, group name, coverage end date, if there's a copay. The note about the copay is that that will always populate to dollars unless you physically type in the percentage sign. So if my copay was $25, I could just type 25, done. But if it was a 20% coinsurance, I would need to put the percentage sign for the system to capture it as a percent. I'm going to keep it as 25. Feel free to enter any more information that might be necessary or that you'd like. And when you're ready, click the Add Insurance button. What you'll notice is that it populates now at the top of the screen with all that information that we entered. The Edit button is there for us to edit. If I needed to add subscriber information, I could go into my subscriber details button. And like a lot of those other places in this system, you may or may not have the delete button. If you needed to add a secondary insurance, maybe I need to add Medicare. Just make sure that you order it. Select order number 2. Is this the right order? I always forget. Is it Medicaid first and then Medicare?
Depends.
Medicare, it depends. Some people told me that it always had to be in a specific order. So Medicare, then Medicaid. So I messed up already. I apologize. Not a biller, but good example of how I could go in and edit these now. Let me keep this as number 1, and then I'll go in and edit. Medicaid is always last. Got it. So I'll enter my Medicare, enter my fake insurance ID, coverage start date. And I'm not going to enter any other fields actually. Overlapping. Okay, so let me add it as number 2. I think that's because I tried to order it as number 1. Yep. So I could always go in and edit and reorder here. And that would allow me to edit those. Actually, I've never done this before. I should have just let them be the way that they were. Actually, what I think I'd have to do, this is an interesting little thing. I might have to put the Medicaid, if I'm reordering, as 3, and then go back. Sorry you're having to watch this in real time here. And then I could go in and edit and order that as 2. I'm gonna have to bring that to somebody's attention because that's not an easy workaround. Mary, have you ever done that?
No.
Had to reorder those? Because I just decided today, I was like, let me add a second one, and they happened to be in the wrong order, and we just got to see a little experiment there. So thanks for your patience. Any questions though, or what questions do you have about insurance, entering insurance, or that little experiment that I just pulled there?
No, but I really like that experiment. That's a nice little fun fact. And then just Dwayne had put in just a little tip and trick to remember when it comes to Medicaid. Medicaid's always going to be the payer of last resort.
Medicaid. Okay, that is good to know. I got to keep that in my head. Medicaid. Trying to think of a way. I guess if I look at the end of the letter, I always look for like weird little tricks. So like Medicare as in, nope, can't do that. I'll figure one out. But okay, thank you for that tip. And if we're good on questions, then we can go ahead to authorizations. So authorizations are right below the insurance link. Insurance, of course, must be entered first because I need to attach this authorization to some kind of insurance. And those insurances will only populate in this box once they've been entered in the insurance link. So I can select the insurance that this authorization is for. So I'll just select my Medicare. What needs to be entered here is this information across the top. There's a lot of additional information that can be added, but I need to put in my period dates, start date. I'm just gonna, if these aren't real life scenarios, I apologize, but I'm just gonna put in some arbitrary start and end dates here for the demo using the calendar picker. I'll put in an auth number. You have the different count types. So is it services, units, hours, right, or days? I'm going to choose units. And then this is your max, right? What's your cap? What's your max unit number? I want to say 2020. And then you have the ability to enter or update the period type as well. If you needed to enter more authorization information as it relates to the actual auth in front of you for that particular insurance, that particular auth, you can see that you have the different selections here for providers, for credential types. If you need to tie it down to a specific program or location, you could do all that. Once you have it set the way it needs to be though, you'll click the Add Authorization button. And just like the insurance, it will add it to the top here. And you'll see all that information listed. You'll be able to see the count as well, including pacing. Update is here. We also have a clone option. And I would like to then direct your eyes down to the bottom where there's the key. This is really nice about those auths. So not only do you have that count that's visible, you saw that back on the home screen too, but this little auth key shows up in the actual authorization part of the record, shows up in the client's overview as well. And then I'll show you when we get to the schedule where you can check authorization information as well. Great chance too, we haven't been back to the overview page here, great chance to look at all of this client information that we've added and how it looks in the overview too. Let's look at one more thing and then I'll pause for questions here. The last thing client related that we're going to look at is attachments. So go ahead and find attachments. It's closer to the bottom of the nav bar, has a little paperclip icon on it. And here you should see in the upper right hand corner an attached new button. When you do that, you'll be brought to this screen where you're able to upload an attachment. Your agency has configured some folders, predefined folders, which is great because it's going to keep this information or these attachments neat and clean. So if you're looking at multiple different clients, you'll know that all of the folder readouts are going to be labeled exactly the same. All of your descriptions could feasibly be titled the same as well. So we're keeping things streamlined and neat and tidy in our domain. You know, you do have the free text boxes. Nobody's stopping you from that, except maybe Patrice, because she was part of that configuration. So she might say, no, 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 definitely use those drop downs, right?
Wow, way to sell me out.
I did that in the last session. I'm gonna owe you a whole dinner.
You really did.
Throwing you under the bus.
I'm just gonna have to pass it on to Raquel because you promised her dinner too.
Oh, that's true. Very true. If you're ever over at, you live really far away. If you're in DC, lots of great restaurants.
Definitely, Raquel is closer to a meal. You would have to come to New York.
I wouldn't mind that, actually. I wouldn't hate that. In our attachments here, guys, though, definitely select from here. Of course, if there's something in here that you didn't, in all seriousness, if there's something that doesn't make sense or that you feel like should be there, reach out because that is an easily configurable item if there's a folder or description that you might need that you're missing. But for now, just choose just so that you can get the experience. I'm going to choose I'm going to put identification documents. I don't know, where would you put insurance card? Do you have a suggestion there for where you would put insurance? Income, maybe? Patrice, sorry, that was a question to you. That you put it in intake?
I don't know, Raquel, Valerie, what do you guys think?
Insurance card, insurance card.
Is it possible to go back and be able to add something specific that says insurance card? Because none of those would reflect the insurance information.
Yes, we can.
Yep, okay, no, yeah. It's right there.
So the insurance card, so this is what the description is gonna be called, but the overall folder though is, so let me just add one and let me show you what I'm talking about. That might make more sense once we see it. I'm gonna put it in intake paperwork for now. And then we'll see what I'm talking about once I add it and we'll come back to the question. So if I'm browsing, those are my headshots, saved pictures. I have a fake insurance card here. Just like adding an attachment to an email, basically I click that browse button, find my document. I'll open it. and then I could click upload, and that's what's actually going to upload it to this attachment section. So this will fill up, right? This is going to fill up, and this is what I'm talking about, the folder name. So folders are here, those are predefined, and then the description that you're looking at here is that predefined description. So back to the question, does intake paperwork work for that, or would you want to have a different folder name for those insurance cards?
What about medical?
Yeah, can we have something specific just for like the billing insurance, something, because that will be more of what, like, I know that we would need to look at as well, to verify their insurance information. So maybe just a folder that has specific insurance.
It's definitely feasible. I mean, that's an easily configurable item. Patrice, that is just something you want to take note of and maybe definitely follow up with.
Okay. So for the client attachments, we want a folder that says billing information or billing documents.
Sounds like it. And Katrina, I think that was Katrina that was
I
talking.
think it's Michelle.
Michelle.
It was Michelle. No,
Sorry.
something that it just says insurance, like something just specific that just says insurance instead of intake paperwork, because intake paperwork is different. Even though it is part of intake, it should be something that just says insurance. That's just
Okay,
for insurance
got it.
information.
Got it.
Okay.
Perfect. Good follow-up, guys. Great example of just little things that you might find or continue to find as you play around and practice in your training domain. Okay. Let me go back actually to this overview here. So once we added that, if there's multiple folders, we'll see these all labeled out in the multiple folders, and then the different files will be within those different folders. And I can close them, I can open them, not much to look at right now. But if I click on that hyperlink, it's going to open the document in whichever document reader is applicable. Okay, guys, that is all of our client related information. We had a long list here of client info that I just pulled up to there. So does anybody have any questions? Or what questions do you have? Lingering, anything you want to see again, comments, concerns, anything like that? Okay, guys, let's take a quick 10-minute break. We've been at this for about an hour again, just to be able to get up and stretch, clear your mind before we get into the rest. We're gonna, next big part to take us to the end is the scheduling piece, looking at what it looks like to schedule for others, and looking at just a tiny little bit of documentation. So I just saw 3:46, so if you guys want to come back at 3:56, we'll wrap up then when we get back.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I am back. Let's take a couple minutes to engage with each other real quick. Totally unrelated, but I just want to keep you awake for a second here as we go into the last hour of our training. It's going to go by quick, I promise. But let me know. Unmute, put it in the questions box. Let me know what you're looking forward to at 5 o'clock once we're done here and we click log out and get out of the training. What are you looking forward to? I'm looking forward to eating. Totally my fault. I just did not make any food today. So I had like one of these Nature Valley bars. So I'm very much looking forward to having a decent meal after this. So what are you looking forward to at 5 o'clock when we're done?
Well, I am looking forward to eating as well, Scott, because I made a new recipe tonight. So I'm hoping that it's a win and not a miss.
What is it, Mary?
What's that?
What is it? What'd you make?
I made a bean soup,
Ooh, that sounds
Italian bean soup.
Yes. Always,
So
always.
I'll let you know how it turns out.
Please do. If it's good, send me that recipe.
You got it. I haven't seen anything else come in yet.
Maybe people are just coming back to their computers.
Yeah.
I'll say what I'm not looking forward to. I'm actually getting ready to switch to my phone because I have a doctor's appointment that I have to get to. So my allergies are so bad, I feel like I'm congested again. So that's what I have to look forward to after this.
Yeah. Well, I hope it at least turns into something good. I hope they can give you some good something to clear that up. Michelle, that's so weird though, because I moved to Roslyn or Arlington like in April. I've been sick 3 times since I've been up here. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the year, if it's the apartment, the pollen, who knows. So I feel you on that, and I hope that you feel better.
Yeah, sending all the positive vibes.
Thank you.
Raquel, I see you're unmuted. What do you have going on?
After this, I have to drive back home. Michelle Booker was like, you need to leave the office now and take this call at home. And I ended up getting stuck here. So now I have to drive from DC to Fort Washington.
Oh, and that's, you're going to be stuck right in that traffic going down 210.
Yeah.
I did that. When I lived in Waldorf, I had to make that drive sometimes and have a good audiobook, or I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, I do. I actually have an audiobook that I've been listening to. So
awesome.
Anyway.
Well, good luck. Don't get too stressed on that drive. I know what that's like.
Raquel, can I just ask for my own curiosity, because I am always looking for new books and particularly audiobooks. Is there one? What are you listening to right now, if you don't mind sharing?
Actually, I have like the unlimited Kindle. So every once in a while, I'll get a book. So the last 2 audiobooks I just listened to was this one I'm doing now is When We Let Go. It's a novel.
Okay.
And then Everything Must Go was the last one, and then the Candy. I can go on for days. So don't ever ask me about book anything, because just over the weekend I think I read 4 books.
Okay. All right. Well, that's right in my wheelhouse. I just have one other question though, because I have not done the Kindle audio through the car. You're just attaching your phone and playing it through the app?
Yep.
Okay. Good to know.
There you go.
Yes, I've gotten my lesson for the day. and some tips and a book tip.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, guys. Thanks for chiming in. I appreciate it. I'm gonna keep my camera on, because sometimes it's nice to like just engage with people or feel like you're engaging with people and see another person as you're kind of getting tired. So I will keep my camera on for this last hour here. And what we're about to do is hop in to the scheduling portion of the training. That's what we're going to finish up doing here today. So Just like I pointed out before, if you're looking for client information, you're going to go to client. If you're looking for the schedule, you're going to go to the schedule tab. Now, there are a couple caveats with that, so just bear with me as I kind of explain a few things here. What you need to know, key point about the schedule tab itself, is that it is for the person that is logged in. So when you click on the schedule tab, you're going to see your name here. So if you're scheduling for others, we're going to talk about how to do that in a second. But if you're ever scheduling or completing documentation that you're completing for yourself for a client, you can do that through the schedule tab. Always good to check the name in the upper left-hand corner because that's whose schedule you're on. I'm going to stay on the schedule tab though to just give you some generalized overview before we go into the different ways we can look at others' schedules. When you're in a schedule like this, you can use the arrows to go forward in time or to go backward in time. Then you have a lot of icons over here. You might not use all of them, and actually I'm not even going to cover all of them. But you have a zoom button, which will just kind of take you down all the way to 5-minute intervals if you wanted to see your schedule differently. Defaults to an hour though. If you wanted to see the day view, there's the day button. That day button turns into the week view. And then there's also a month view. So if you're maybe scheduling out real far, the month view might be better. Next to the month view is the team view. And you can always hover to discover, good term to just remember. You'll always get a little pop-up telling you what that function is. Team view we'll come back to because that's one way that we can see others' schedules. So if I'm on a team, any team that I'm on will show up in this drop-down. And then I can toggle between those different teams. See all of those people across the top that I can schedule for. Okay. I'm going to go back to week view though. Actually, I'm just going to click the schedule tab one more time. So go ahead and click the schedule tab. You have a print view if anybody needs a schedule printed off. You have that. Block time. Block time is typically more for others. Clinicians will probably put this on themselves, but just know that if a clinician has block time on their schedule, you won't be able to schedule in that time. You could remove it by clicking on the title of it and just deleting it. If that clinician says, hey, yeah, that's fine, delete it, schedule for me. But just know that clinicians can add block time to their schedules, which will literally block you from scheduling during that time. The last icon I want to point out is the hide cancellations button. And what that does is hides anything in a canceled or no-show status. So then you can schedule over top of it. It's a little X icon. Okay. What you've probably noticed already is that your dates are across the top, your times are across the left-hand side, and then all of this gray grid in the middle here is the actual schedule. And that gray grid is where I have the ability to click to pull up my scheduler window. Before I do that though, I want to point out a couple other color coding things that you'll want to note and understand. When an appointment is scheduled and it's sitting in a scheduled status, it hasn't been touched in any way after it's been scheduled, it'll be in this blue hyperlink. When it turns to green, we're going to show you how to do that, but when it's green, it means that that client has arrived. We can set them to an arrived status. Pointed this out before, but if you hover over your X, it'll tell you which type of no-show it is, cancel, no-show, cancel by provider, etc. Anything in this orange color is an incomplete service. You might not have as many of these because you might not be doing as many services, but it's good to know that it exists, because if you do have an incomplete service, it either needs to be completed, it's signed and submitted, because if it's incomplete, it can't go out for billing or review in any way. It won't then actually be attached to the client's record if it's not completed, or either sign and submit it or discard it so that it's not taken up the schedule. And then when you see the black hyperlink, that is a completed service. The little person icon next to the client's name takes you back to the client's profile, which is a great little shortcut. And I'm actually going to, sure, I know I was working with Jeremy. I'm going to go to Michelle though. I'm going to click back into a client. What you could do though, what I would like you to do, we're going to look at a client because we're going to look at this first available functionality first. And what you can do, if you happen to have one, go ahead and click there, or just go to the client tab and find yourself a client again. However you get there, make sure you're looking at a client's profile. And when you're on that client's profile, on the nav bar, you're going to see a little alarm clock icon that says first available. What this does is exactly what it says. It searches for the first available appointment based on the parameters that you've set. So if you're searching for a specific program, you can select or multi-select programs. You can select a team. If you needed to narrow it down by specific employees, like maybe 3 or 4 employees that could see this client, you could narrow that down as well. There are things called schedule templates. And just for your note, Patrice, I made this one. You guys didn't have any in there, and I'm not sure where you're at in that discussion or if you had it again in terms of configuration.
Okay.
Coming down the road, but I made one. So if that is something that you're still considering and would like to have configured, just make sure you make note of that and bring that up again.
Okay.
Or possibly if you need to put a change request in, I'm not sure where you're at in that process. So.
Oh, I got a whole list of change requests just from this day.
Totally natural, that happens every time, so no worries there, but just another thing to add if that's what you're looking for.
Service type templates, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And just so everybody's aware, what clinicians can do is add a schedule template onto their schedule. So this one is an assessment, so they can add a template that says they're available for assessments from this time to this time on this day, this day, this day. And first available could search for that. So more to come on that. Put a pin in that, but just note it exists. And then you can search for a specific date. So if you're walking along with me, I would suggest that you just put in a date range. You don't actually have to put an end date. You do have to put a begin date though. And what I would do is select select a specific program, a program that you know that you typically will schedule somebody for, or select, actually, you could keep it wide open, whatever you'd like to do, however it works for you. Click search. And what that does is pulls up the first available appointment based on the parameters that we set. So I just kind of left it really wide open. I was just looking for the first available appointment from anybody on any program. And I didn't even put a time range. You could have narrowed it down from like 10 a.m. to 2 or 9 to noon. You could even refilter that way here once you get results. What you'll notice though, if you remember from work hours from earlier in the session, those work hours show up, and these people are only showing up because they have work hours entered into the system. That's an important thing to remember for everybody. And that little blank space is preferably their lunch, right? So we'd want to try to schedule within that dark line if possible. So go ahead, if you got results, the next step is to actually schedule for your client. So what you do is find the clinician that we're supposed to schedule with. I'm just going to put it on my schedule. You can put it on anybody's that you'd like. Click in that gray grid across, as close to across from the time as possible. So I'm trying to hit this 9 a.m. time. So I'm going to click as close to that 9 a.m. time as possible. And what that does is pulls up my scheduler window. Give me a quick hand raise to let me know that you're looking at a scheduler window that you see on my screen.
Seeing a couple.
Great.
More coming in.
Okay. Awesome. Once you're looking at this scheduler window, a couple things. We're typically thinking about our who, our what, our where, and our why. Nope, no why on this one, sorry. It's the end of the day. My brain was just going. The who, the what, and the where. And the when. Yep, wow. Who, what, where, when. I've said that so many times, if my brain just is totally jumbled right now. Who being either the employee or the client. We're scheduling through a client's schedule technically right now, so our who is going to be the employee. But when we're scheduling on an employee schedule, our who's of course then going to be the client. I could select those from the drop down if needed. My what is the service type, and this is where those program abbreviations become important, because I need to know, am I scheduling for the MD, the OMH, or am I scheduling for the Maryland primary care? Because some of those service types might cross programs. So just be careful and reference your program type first. So I'm just going to schedule an individual therapy session here because we're really just in the process of putting it on the schedule. And then I can select my location. The location's not required right now, but it can save time, or would save time for the clinician later. They won't have to set it later. They could always change it to, you know, if it gets scheduled as an office now, they could go back in later and change it to telehealth if needed. But it does save a little bit of time if you schedule it now. Your when then, of course, being that time that you selected on the gray grid. You could adjust that in 15-minute increments as needed. Your durations typically default for different service types, but you can adjust the duration as well if you need to. Before you click schedule, up at the very top, I told you there was one other place where you would see this information. This is where you could see warnings again. I put my warnings on Jeremy, I didn't put them on Michelle, but if you're working with a client that you put a warning on, you should see that listed here. And then you could also check off information from here as well. The little blue dot is going to give you authorization information. Good things to reference before you schedule. If there's anything you needed somebody to know about this, or a reminder, maybe collect insurance card, something like that, you could enter that note here and it'll just kind of stick on the scheduler. It won't really be attached to any formal documentation. You can schedule this if you needed. You could also schedule recurrences. If this is, you know, Michelle's weekly appointment, you could set it up as a recurrence that way. But just for now, for demo, I'm going to click schedule and put that on the schedule. When you're scheduling through First Available, once you put that on the schedule for the client, all that other availability disappears because we kind of completed our search and completed our process for that time. What questions do you have about first available? Or do you need to see how to access that again? Anything like that?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box, and I'm not seeing any hand raises.
Okay. What you can do then is navigate to the employee whose schedule you're on. I just want you to check and have validation that it's there. So find that employee that you just scheduled for through the employee link or the employee tab. You can click right onto their schedule button once you find them. I'm going to go to my schedule tab though, because I scheduled on my own schedule. I'm going to check in with you again here real quick. Put your hand up and go to webinar if you're looking at the appointment you just scheduled on that employee's schedule. Just want to make sure because we're going to do one more thing through that employee's schedule as well.
See a couple coming up.
Okay. Yep, I'm watching that too, Mary. Looks like we're getting the same hands there, which is good. So you're looking at this appointment you just scheduled. What we can do is also mark that appointment as arrived. So again, just in terms of workflows, this might be a little disjointed, but remember we're just looking at functionality today. But let's say that client arrives. I can either go to the client schedule, I could use the team view, I could go to that employee schedule, however I access it. When I find it, I click onto that appointment. And then in this status here, I have all these different statuses. Let's go ahead and choose arrived and click save. And that's what marks that and highlights that in the green. So that tells that person, that tells that employee, hey, your appointment's ready. They completed the paperwork or whatever check-in process you guys do. Mark them as arrived. Clinician knows they can come and lead the client back for their appointment. We can mark, actually what we have to do is schedule another, well, we don't have to, we can use the same appointment. Now let's just go through the process again, sorry. Real-time debate in my own head there. Let's just go through that scheduling process one more time so you can do it. So you're, again, on an employees tab. Okay, so you went to the employee tab, you searched for your person. You're just trying to schedule a follow-up appointment now. You can click that schedule button. And it takes you to that employee's schedule. Just wanted to review that one more time. And then I'm going to actually shut up for like 2 minutes. And I'm going to let you schedule any other appointment for that employee. Pull in your client, give them a service type, make sure the time is correct. And when you're done scheduling that appointment on that employee's schedule, let me know somehow. Either raise your hand or just drop something in the questions box telling me you have your second appointment on that employee's schedule. Just trying to test your knowledge a little bit. Again, once you have that second appointment on your employee schedule, just let me know. Raise your hand, put in GoToWebinar, or in the questions box rather. Or if you need help with that process, again, let me know. All right, now I'm getting nervous. So anybody need help? You guys got so quiet there. Does anybody need help going through that process? Again, I need to know that you scheduled that second appointment for your employee.
Hey, Raquel,
Yes, sir.
how we doing?
Oh, all of this we kind of already know here in DC because we already,
Oh, you use Credible. You use the DC Credible. Got it.
yeah, you might want to
The
ask,
DC GBH.
an MD person if they got it.
Okay. Pass the baton. Ask somebody.
Oh, I don't know who's I can't see who's on the call.
Oh, Katrina. Is Katrina
She's
DC
MD,
too?
I mean, she's DC and she's at front
Lynn.
desk.
Lynn? Ms. Lynn Thompson?
Yeah, let's hear.
Did you get to add your person? Hannah?
I'm not sure. I don't think I have access to everything because I was able to put it under, like, make an appointment for someone, but then I wasn't able to access that employee's schedule.
Okay.
Which employee was it?
JE.
JJ.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I keep scheduling and then it doesn't show up.
Are you getting any kind of error or anything when you go to his schedule?
No.
Okay. So let's just make sure you search for that employee, right? You have the schedule
Yep.
button here. Do you see the schedule button?
Yep. Hold on. Let me schedule. Oh, now it's saying. I don't know where my appointments are going.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes there's weird training domain quirks. It happens. But just to walk through that process again one more time, guys, since we're getting down to the end here, I'll walk you through it. You'll have a recording of it. DC people, I didn't realize that you were so familiar with it already. So thank you for your patience as we go through this again, or as you go through it again. When you find your employee, you can click directly onto the schedule button and schedule, or it will take you to their schedule. Click in that gray grid. And this is where you think about your who, what, where, and your when, who being the client. You guys have the drop down here to select from your clients. You could also use the ellipses, the 3 dots, to search for a client and pull them in as well. Service type being the what, where, and the when, pretty self-explanatory. So you guys seem, or if you're okay on that, we'll just keep kind of chugging along here. And what I need you to do is find an appointment. If you're still following along with me, find an appointment and open that appointment, click on the hyperlink, and instead of marking them as arrived, let's mark them as a no-show. When you mark them as a no-show or a cancel or any of these statuses that are related to that no-show cancel concept, you're going to get this little button here that says begin cancellation no-show form. And when I click that, it's going to take me directly to this no-show form. And so this is something, if you haven't done yet, go ahead and walk through it with me, because all documentation is laid out the same way. I have my client on the left-hand side, their name, the service that I'm completing, or if I'm doing multiple services, like a group, or I'm creating a dynamic form group by pulling in extra forms. I'll see all of them here. We're just doing one though. And then there's a link tree on the left-hand side and buttons on the right-hand side that take you to the same place, basically. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and click into that cancel no-show. Some of these questions in some of your forms will have asterisks, meaning they're required. So you do have to answer that before you can complete this section of the form. So I'll just put transportation. I'm purposefully not going to answer that, because if I don't, then you get to see this little pop-up. So you got to see that this action taken, or I need to enter a value for action taken. And I can do that. Let's say I called to check on the client. Date last seen is not required, but is good to have in here. Let's say we saw them at their last appointment last week. Then I could complete that. In terms of the counselor, I don't know if you guys as front desk will use this, or if this was maybe more just for the clinician if they're completing this, but you can access that and follow up with whether you send a letter or a phone call and add any extra comments. Once you click that checkbox, you'll open up your text box and you can add extra information there if needed. So I'll go ahead and click complete on that. And just like everything else, we want to make sure we click all those complete buttons to save our work. This bigger complete button though is what's actually going to take me to my sign and submit page. So I've said that a whole lot. This is the important part. This is what I need to get through in order for this documentation to go to the service tab, in order for it to get approved, and then feasibly to have it batched out and billed, if it is an actual billable service. If I don't do this, if I don't sign and submit, this is how I create an incomplete service. Excuse me. The location is going to pull in from what was scheduled. I don't have a diagnosis on file for Michelle, but if I did, I could pull that in. I could reorder if needed, based on program, based on billing scenarios, based on whatever he might need to do with those diagnoses. Recipient is typically defaulted. Billing groups, you have a lot of them. This is just something you'll want to check, and Patrice, that you'll just want to make sure is something that is definitely in a workflow or definitely trained, that they know which billing group to select. There are ways to default it, but just make sure that that's definitely clear. And then the big part, okay, the big part here is the password. If you saved your employee signature, like we did at the very beginning, you don't have to capture it here. It'll just automatically pull it. If you would have to capture a client signature for anything, you do have these boxes though. I mentioned discarding services. This is where you would find that button to discard something. But ultimately, we entered our password that we use to sign into the domain. And because this is it's a non-billable, it's set to 0 minutes. It's always going to tell us this. It's going to give us this notification. It's also going to give us this notification if it's like way over time, like, hey, you just completed a service of 11 hours and like 21 minutes. Are you sure? So it will get you the short end and the kind of the way long end as a notification, but you could just click OK as long as you're accurate and correct. And that will come in as, actually that looks like that's set to auto approve. Some of your services might auto approve in the system. But when you're completing a service like that, you will always be redirected to the service tab. So don't let that mess you up. Just know that that will happen. Any questions about that?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box, and I do not see any hand raises.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Well, now that I know you guys know this so well, I should have just said, hey, DC people, my voice hurts. You wanna train? You wanna tell us what's going on?
Nope. You get the big bucks for that.
Raquel would have passed out.
Yeah, no.
I needed a little bit of like levity there in that situation. I appreciate
All of a sudden, Raquel would have told you she had no internet service.
it. Oh, right. I don't even have a computer. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. No, I would have been like, like, you know how you have every other syllable being like, so your internet is.
Go through a tunnel, yeah.
I can't.
I love
That's
it.
how my training would have been.
Awesome. Okay. Well, no, guys, it's been awesome. So let's get into the last little piece here, which is discharge information. So two separate things here. You have discharge thinking about like an agency discharge. You have discharge thinking about maybe they're just being discharged from a single program, like they're just only being discharged from the OMH, I forget exactly what that is. Yeah, the OMHC, but they're still in the primary care possibly. So you have those two. But then you also have the discharge paperwork that you can send out with your integrated primary care system. So I'm going to start there. When you do have a client that has discharge paperwork through IPC, you're going to see that in your record, in your employee record. And there will be this little discharge link once that service has been completed. Feasibly, a clinician could finish it there, or they could push it out to the front desk, and that's when you would see it and have this today's workup section. And this is where you could click discharge. Okay, and all that information, I didn't do much with this service. I just created it quickly so that you could see it. But this is where you could finalize and print it, or again, this is where somebody could send it to the front desk and send it out. It would go to that profile code. So just know that this is one version of that discharge that's related to IPC, where you could print out their kind of actual discharge paperwork. As we then talk about more of an agency discharge, or maybe just a single program discharge, that's all going to happen through the client's record. So for Michelle, I'm just going to go into Michelle here. So if you're still clicking along with me, click into any client here. What we're going to first do for her is run an appointment history report. And actually, let me do something real quick. Let me put an appointment on the schedule for her. Quick trick, if you didn't know this, if you're in that drop down here and you know who you're looking for, so even though it's not a search as you type field necessarily, I could still type Morelli and it's going to take me to her in that list. So hopefully a quick trick for you. I'm going to just throw something random on there in the future for her. Let me do 2. Only doing this so that you could see me delete them later. Okay. So again, first part of this process is to navigate to the client's record. On the record, on their record, they have a schedule link. And on that schedule, there's this little appointment history icon. The appointment history icon will take you and show you all of the appointment history, just like it says. And you can use this in all kinds of different ways. You could search for any kind of status appointment that's been saved for this client. Really though, what we're using it for right now is looking for appointments that are scheduled out into the future. So I'll click that scheduled status. Here's where we start to think between the difference of a program discharge versus a full agency. If they're getting a full agency discharge done with VOA for the foreseeable future, then you're not going to select any program. We want every appointment to pull in from every program they're in. However, if they're just being discharged from the MAT program, the DC MAT, then I would select just DC MAT, so only DC MAT scheduled appointments pull in. So it's the difference between program versus full agency. In terms of these dates, this search always backdates a month, so just make sure that you pull that up to date. I'm going to say anything tomorrow forward, I want to have off the schedule. And depending on your scheduling practices, that would dictate what you put your end date as. So is it 2 weeks? Is it a month? I've never seen anybody schedule out as far as a year yet, but that will dictate your end date. And then of course you'll filter. When you do this, my suggestion, once the results pull in, my suggestion is to always right-click on the date and open in a new tab. You can do it one at a time and click filter. You can open all of them. There is unfortunately not a bulk delete option, so that's why we have to do this. But it's very quick. Once I have them open in extra tabs, click on the appointment, delete that appointment. And I put it on the same day so I could actually do this here, but if they were all on multiple days, they would have to have multiple tabs open, but I can delete. Since I put it on the same day, click on the appointment, click delete. I could get rid of these tabs then, and I can filter one more time. Why did I do it that way? Because if I click on the date, it's gonna take me off of that screen. I'm gonna have to re-enter my search parameters. So that's why I always like to right click on them to keep my search parameters intact, so I can filter one more time and make sure it's all gone for whatever parameters I had set. Any questions about that appointment history report?
I am not seeing anything come in the question box, and I don't see any hand raises.
All right. Okay. Then let's start the unassignment process. We're going to unassign from teams. Again, this is where you'd want to be thinking program versus full agency. If it's just a single team and program, of course, you'll just unassign from that single team, done. But if it's a full agency, we're going to unassign from everything and have a couple more steps. Your domain is configured to have this unassignment reason. Let's say they were just released. You could add extra notes if you needed to. And you'll do that for every program that is necessary, or every team that is necessary. Okay. You don't have a direct relationship in a lot of yours, so you will have to go into the programs separately and unassign those programs separately. Same thing, is it a single program or a full agency? I want to do the full agency because I want you to see something. So I'll unassign from all these programs. Remember, the program and the episode are still related. So as soon as I unassign from the program, the system is going to automatically close that episode. She's got 2 more here. The system is also configured to give you this little notification. Once you've unassigned the last program, the system will tell you, hey, that's actually their last active episode. So do you need to go update their status? Should you be doing that right now? You could, of course, say yes or no, depending on your workflow. If you click yes, though, it's going to take you right to their profile, where then you can mark them as the appropriate status. DC and Maryland, I know you have two separate statuses there in terms of which one you would choose. But just know that it will take you there once the last episode is closed. It'll give you that notification and take you here. Keep in mind that if you did need to update any episodic information, you would want to do that first, or before you unassign that team. If you don't have those overriding security rights that allow you to override the team relationship, you'd want to make sure that you document everything as needed before you unassign the team, or you're not going to then have access to them anymore. So just be careful about that as we're thinking about workflows. I'm going to keep her as active, actually, because I'll probably use her as a demo in the upcoming sessions. But as always, click update to save your work. And that would really be the last step in that process. The only thing I didn't mention, I'm just checking over my notes and thinking out loud here, in terms of unassignments, if you guys start using groups or assign or know that this person's assigned to a schedule group, or even just put it into the workflow as something to check every time there's this schedule groups link, we want to make sure that we unassign them from that schedule group as well, so they're not lingering there. Okay. Let me just keep zipping through this because I just have a couple last little bits of things of information for you, and then we'll open it up for questions. Though I know it is 5 o'clock, so I'm sure you're ready to go, but let me just finish it up. Incomplete services, like I mentioned, you'll always want to have a handle on. Make sure that you know it, remind your friends about it, talk to everybody about it, make sure they know that these incomplete services need to be completed in some way, either completed, signed and submitted, or discarded. We don't want them sitting here. You can see them on this tab or on the home tab. Remember, you see them in the schedule in orange. You could also see them in the service tab. If you have any, you'll see this button here. You can access your incomplete services this way. So even as front desk, as schedulers, you would still want to make sure that you don't have anything sitting in an incomplete status in your domain. Last thing, question mark. Question mark gives us access to the knowledge base. The knowledge base is a fantastic, wonderful, sometimes overwhelming place to learn information about anything and everything in terms of functionality within the system. There's also some news as well. Really, I'm just going to highlight the search function here, do a little magnifying glass. And let's say looking for schedule information. So I typed in scheduler, wasn't a great search there actually. So let me just type in schedule. It can be a little finicky sometimes with the results that it pulls in. So let's say schedule tab overview. You can find that. What's great about the knowledge base is that if you didn't find exactly what you're looking for, you're always going to see these also read. So you're going to get little bits of information that might come closer to what you're looking for. And you also then have the reference library here that's going to allow you to access anything, sometimes quicker than the search bar. You could save this, save to your profile here. This gives you more options to be able to pin to the bottom right or print. And if you loved it so much and you just wanted to share it with everybody, you could copy it, send it out in an email, and let them know that you found some really great information. The other Credible related resource that we have, you can access through the knowledge base. You can also just save as a separate web link, but in the knowledge base, the ellipses will open up to have access to LMS. You should have all been started hopefully on on your Kickstarter courses. It is a separate login. It is a separate website. I save it. I have it bookmarked. But this is a place where trainings can be assigned to you, or you can look for trainings. If anything has been assigned to you, or you enrolled in it yourself, it'll live on the My Training tab. Don't judge me for all of the ones that I have not gotten into yet. They're all things from a long time ago that I ended up just getting hands-on experience with. So
No judgment here.
right, I think we all probably look about the same.
Judgment-free zone.
If we're looking for something new though, we'll go to the catalog. You can keyword search here. You could also just open up your folders for partner trainings. And the one that I want to point out here are these new microlearning series Mary, myself, and the other product training team members created, and we're going to continue to work on. If you open up that folder, we have short, literally 2 minutes, 2 to 8 minutes. I don't think there's anything longer than like 8 minutes or so on bite-sized microlearning of anything in the system. I think this is a great resource. It's going to continue to grow. But if you forget how to set up employee messaging, you can watch that video. If you need to, if you forgot what happens in employee config or how you need to do that, your signature. Obviously, those are just a couple examples, but it's great for you. And the last one, keyword searching end-user. I know that sounds specific, but it does need the hyphen. We do have a pre-recorded end user training. That's very, very general. But if you ever needed to use this as a refresher, you could come in and use that. Okay. I'm going to ask for questions, then I'm going to send you my survey link, and then we're all free here to log off. So I know nobody wants to be that last person in the meeting raising their hand and asking a question, but this time is yours. So what questions do you have? Can I help you with anything? Would you like to see anything again while you have me here for 12 minutes?
I am not seeing anything coming in, and I don't see any hand raises.
Okay. All right, guys, in the chat, just making sure it's going to everybody. In the chat, I just sent you a CVent link to our survey, and actually, Patrice, I'm going to put it as a link on your homepage as well. I'm going to set it to expire, so you won't have to worry about it.
Okay.
And I'll end date it as in a week. Okay, so that you'll have access to that there on the homepage. So next time you get into your training domain and have access to it, or you're practicing, don't forget to open up that link. And I sound like a YouTuber right now. I don't mean for it to sound like that, but we do actually use this information very critically as a department to make sure that our trainings are on par and providing the information that you need. And we use it as trainers too to make sure that we're doing what we need to do as trainers to help you out. So please, 2 to 3 minutes, promise. I took it once myself. That's all it took. It's there for you. So with that, guys, I have no more information for you. I know it's not much, but you do have 10 minutes back in your schedule. So if you're good, I'd just love to hear you say goodbye or let me know something on your way out. But feel free to log out and have a wonderful evening and a great go live.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Wrong, I saw your message in there. Thank you. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna eat. Okay. Mary, it looks like we're good. Patrice, I think we're good. So I'm going to go ahead
Yes.
and this out.
Thank
So,
you so much. I will see you tomorrow. We will do it again.
yes, ma'am.
All right. Have a good evening, guys.
Yes.
Hi, have a good evening.
Bye-bye.